Since the first trailer for Civil War, I have been so hyped for this movie, and even though I despised Alex Garland's last outing, the $50 million budget and riveting marketing won me over, and I am so happy to report that I loved this movie. With Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Jesse Plemons, Nick Offerman, and one of my favorite up-and-coming actresses, Kaylee Spaney, there was a good chance that my high expectations would have honestly turned me away from this movie. But not only does every single performance of this movie deliver, but every single frame is perfect on the IMAX screen. The score is riveting, and the dude next to me was curled up in his seat, stressed out as hell. And it's safe to say that this movie absolutely rocks, and I am beyond excited to talk more about it. And before we get into more of my thoughts on this movie, if you want to check out an extended version of this review, you can check it out for free right now on my Patreon. And if you want more movie and TV talk, you can check out my weekly podcast called Third Thoughts with me and my best friend, where we just talk about all of the movie and TV news every single week. But without wasting more time, let's get right into it, talking more about Alex Garland's Civil War. And honestly, coming off of Men, I was really hesitant to see what Garland was going to do next, because I really do not like the movie Men. But I got to see this movie early on a massive IMAX screen. I sat dead in the center of the theater, and this movie had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. I was stressed the hell out, but this movie also wasn't what I was expecting really at all. It had its premiere at South by Southwest about a month ago, and out of South by, there were a lot of great raving reactions, but also some mixed ones. It debuted with a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, and safe to say that I was still very excited for it, but I still went in not knowing much about the story, and coming out of it, I really like the direction that Garland took here, because this isn't really a historical movie at all. This isn't really about a civil war itself. It's not politically charged in any way. It's more so about war photographers. Obviously, you know, the horrors of it, but also critiques the profession of press. And as someone who's in press, obviously for a different industry than obviously politics and stuff like that, I really got this movie. I really liked it. I love the critique of it, and I feel like the critique that this movie gives to war photography can be given to press in literally every single scenario. And honestly, I think Alex Garland does an amazing job of tackling it. Obviously, he's tackling war and politics to an extent, but I think this is a commentary on the broader idea of press, the purpose of press, and the lengths that press is willing to go, and what they're willing to see, and the trauma they're willing to endure for the people. And I think it works because everything else about this movie is so entertaining that it doesn't necessarily need to take a side. I want to start off by talking about this cast, because it's absolutely absurd. The cast is obviously a highlight of this film. When you watch the trailer, you just see these massive names, and honestly, actors that you're excited to see share the screen together. You have Nick Offerman, who plays the President of the United States. He's not in the movie for very long, but he is very amazing the moments that he's in it. Again, very small role, but an amazing one at that. You have Wagner Moura. I think this is one of the few roles I've seen him in. I haven't seen him in much, but I definitely recognize his face. But I will say, his comedic timing in this film is amazing, but also every single emotional moment also got me. I think he puts on a masterclass here, and he really helps Garland as a director juggle a lot of tones, because I will say, out of all the actors and actresses in this movie, Wagner Moura has the most, I guess, depth, and also just two sides that he has to play to this character, and he does an amazing job. You also have Kirsten Dunst, who is phenomenal. She is basically the lead of this film, and she's the one that's kind of mentoring Kaylee Spaney's character, who I'll talk about in just a second here, but Kirsten Dunst is absolutely awesome. I think her character definitely has a little bit of a slower start. Her trauma is very much the core of the war photography story in this film, and so I feel like if you're not really sold on her performance, the rest of the movie won't really work for you, but for me, she worked really well. And then Jesse Plemons, holy shit. The one scene he's in this movie, you've seen this moment in the trailers if you've seen the trailers. It is breathtaking.
Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
Alex Garland knew how to use this man's talent. Every second of that sequence, it is riveting. It's some of the scariest moments I've had the pleasure of witnessing in a theater in a very long time. I absolutely love what they do here in this sequence. And then to Kaylee Spaney. I'm part of the Kaylee Spaney hive. I have been since the beginning of Priscilla's rollout, and she's going to be an alien Prometheus if I'm not mistaken, and she is on an absolute roll here. She is fucking amazing in this movie. It's kind of scary. I think the outlier nature of Kaylee Spaney's character is what makes her so good, and this idea of wanting to do something that you know is going to cause so much trauma and that the living manifestation of that trauma is literally right next to you. I think that story is still so captivating, and it works without getting super duper political, and that's what I like so much about it. And I think the juggling of all of these themes and tones is what makes this movie work so well. I will say, and I'll talk about my more flaws later in this video, but I will say the themes of, anti-press, all of that kind of stuff is very blatant. It's not really explored further than what you're given, but I think they juggle so many tones that I don't really mind that the main theme is kind of just surface level. It juggles so many different tones and it manages to actually be able to stick the landing in these very sad, dark, and depressing moments, but also it's able to really just go all the way out there with the comedic moments. And there's some moments where you're about to laugh and then you see something actually crazy happen because of something that made you laugh and you just completely shut down. You just can't believe what happened. And I want to lean more into this runtime thing because it clocks in at just under 2 hours, an hour and 50 minutes, but this movie feels like it's 3 hours long in the best way possible. This film surrounds itself on a mission, and that mission is basically the journey of this movie, and everything is paced so well that I think the tension between the scenes is what makes it feel so long, but it's so worth it in my opinion. And again, the gut-wrenching moments of this film, and by that I mean like 99% of this movie, every single one of these scenes is so perfectly timed, and there's so much tension between these scenes, I think because of the brutality itself. It never feels overdone. I think the tension is super set from the very beginning. It's set in this dystopian world, and everything feels life or death from the first frame of this film. The opening is absolutely insane. I wouldn't even say just up until the title card, but even the first 2 to 3 minutes of this film. And in regards to the characters, I think that's where this movie truly peaks and is able to do exactly what it does. We care so deeply about each of these characters, and there's a moment that my mind keeps going back to leading into the final act of this film. The guy next to me was literally biting his fist. He was that stressed out. I think the humanistic nature of war is what Garland is able to capture so well in this movie. And even the brutal yet privileged view of war photography, it's all expressed with such grace that you care for everyone. No matter how much you disagree with them, all of the character work leads you back to wanting to root for the lives of these characters. Even if you don't agree with what they're doing or what they're saying, every single moment feels powerful. And again, a movie has not had me this stressed out in a very, very long time. Segments of movies, of course they have, but throughout 99% of this runtime, I was just in full fear. And I do want to nerd out a little bit and talk about some of the technical elements of this film because this movie is absolutely visceral. I saw this on an IMAX screen. It wasn't filmed for IMAX, but it was shot and presented in 1.85, and honestly, it fits the IMAX 190 perfectly fine, I'm not gonna lie to you. And I was trying to figure out a bunch of the camera specs for this movie, but nothing solid is out there, but we know that it's shot on a Venice 2, an Alpha 7S3, and they also had a DJI Ronin 4D, and I think what works so well about this movie is the fact that every single internal element of these cameras feels so grand. And obviously a lot of it has to do with the color grading because it's shot raw, I think the technical elements just make everything pop so much. I know some people might not agree with me on this one, but I think everything pops so much that visually it doesn't feel real to me. I don't know if that makes sense, but to kind of put it simply, it feels like if you're watching something with a higher frame rate than your eyes can actually process, but in a visual color sense. Everything feels so crisp and so real, but it kind of is too real that it's unreal. And in terms of complaints about this movie, I definitely get the complaint that this movie is a little bit shallow. Again, like I said, a lot of the thematic elements are touched on and then they kind of are just surface level throughout the entirety of the movie. I get that, but I didn't really mind because of the tone juggling. And also, I see why this might feel too long for others as well. Every single scene is drawn out with tension, and so if the tension doesn't work for you, then you're gonna find this movie to just be on for way too long. Now, my only personal complaint about this movie, I have two small things. On rewatch, I'm not sure this movie will hold up as well. And also, a lot of the song choices in this movie are very odd. I kind of get what he was going for in terms of, a balletic, something crazy brutal just happened. You play some music that doesn't really fit with it, but it's kind of contrasty. I get that idea. It didn't really work for me. It tonally shifted the movie just a little bit too much because you're already juggling so many different tones that when you try to pick something that makes a brutal moment super lighthearted, you're taking away from the other comedic moments that came before that. So again, I think some of the song choices don't work here, but the score in and of itself is absolutely brilliant. But to wrap it up here, I think Civil War is absolutely awesome. I went in really nervous because I didn't like Alex Garland's last movie, but the marketing sold me. It's A24's highest budgeted movie. It has an incredible cast, and Garland honestly directs the hell out of it. I'm gonna give Alex Garland's Civil War a 9 out of 10. I'm gonna go rewatch this one opening weekend, and I definitely think you should check this out on the biggest screen that you possibly can. Again, 100% recommend checking out. If you've seen or want to check out Civil War, let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.